Namaste. Today I would like to read from a very important text. This book I have with me is called I Am That, and it is by Swami Muktananda Paramhamsa, who was a very great Siddha yogi, a perfected yogi. And he was also the direct disciple of the great Avadhuta Bhagavan Nityananda of Ganeshpuri. Now, this particular book is a commentary on the science of Hamsa from the Vigyan Bhairava Tantra, which are basically the teachings of Lord Shiva, which he has imparted to Mother Parvati. Now, all copyrights for this particular book reside with the Chit Shakti publications and Siddha Yoga publications. So I'll read. Shiva says, Urdhve prano hi adho jivo visargatma parocharet utpatti dvitaya sthane bharanad bharita sthitihi. The Supreme Goddess, whose nature is to create, ceaselessly expresses herself upward from the center of the body in the form of exhalation and downward in the form of inhalation. Sit quietly and watch the going out and coming in of the breath. The outgoing breath is called prana, and the incoming breath is called apana. Apana is also called jiva, the individual soul, because only when the apana enters the body can it be said that the soul is in the body. If the prana goes out and the apana does not come back in, then the body is nothing but a corpse. When the apana comes in, it moves downward towards the heart. When the prana goes out, it moves upward. In this way, the breath keeps arising and subsiding. As the breath comes in and goes out, it makes a sound. When it comes in, it makes the sound hum. And when it goes out, it makes the sound sah. The sound of the breath coming in and going out is the repetition of the Hamsa mantra. This is what you must understand about Hamsa mantra. It is natural japa, natural mantra repetition. Whether we are aware of it or not, this mantra is always going on. It goes on not only in us, but in all living creatures, and it is because of its pulsation that all creatures are alive. In a human being, the breath comes in and goes out 21,600 times a day, and each time it repeats this mantra. We may think we are repeating the mantra at certain times, but in reality, it goes on spontaneously 21,600 times a day. This is how enlightened beings understand mantra repetition. The great Saint Kabir described this natural japa in one of his poems, saying, I am not repeating the mantra on my beads, nor am I repeating it with my tongue. God Himself is repeating my mantra while I sit in a very relaxed manner and listen to it. This is known as ajapa japa, unrepeated mantra repetition. Ordinary people practice external japa, in which they repeat the mantra out loud or in the mind. But inside us, this natural mantra is taking place. one who simply watches the breath, being aware that it is coming in and going out with the sounds hum and sa, is pursuing ajapa japa. This is the true way of practicing Hamsa mantra. Hamsa is also known as Ajapa Gayatri, the unrepeated Gayatri mantra. It is the self-born mantra. No sage invented it. It was not composed by any yogi. The Lord Himself initiates us into this mantra when we are in our mother's womb. It is said in the Garbha Upanishad that when the fetus in the womb is 7 months old, the soul receives knowledge of its past and future. It knows who it has been and who it will be. When the movie of its lives passes before its mind, it becomes frightened and begins moving restlessly here and there. But in whichever direction the fetus tries to move, it runs into trouble. When it moves upward, it comes up against the stomach. There it is burned by the gastric fire. It moves away and bumps into the kidney. The kidney is very salty. And when the fetus receives the shock of that, it moves away again. But when it moves away from the kidney, it comes up against the intestines, which stink. In this way, it keeps moving all the time, and wherever it moves, a new difficulty arises to welcome it. Finally, the fetus becomes desperate and begins to call out to God for help. Now, God, the Self, is right there. He has been watching all of this. And when at last the soul starts crying out and taking refuge in Him, God bestows His grace upon it. He gives it instruction in Soham, which means that am I, and which is the same as Hamsa mantra. As the fetus repeats the mantra, it begins to understand its identity with the Supreme Principle. It becomes immersed in the Soham, awareness. The awareness of its true nature, and becomes calm and serene. However, when 9 months are over, the fetus is forcibly ejected from the mother's womb. The moment it comes out, it begins crying, making the sound kwa, kwa, or koham, koham. It forgets God's instructions and the understanding it has attained. It forgets the awareness of Soham and cries, Koham, who am I? From that moment, it begins to identify itself in different ways, saying, I am this body, I belong to a particular class, I am a woman, I am a man, I am a sinner. It becomes established in this kind of understanding and lives its life accordingly. Yet, all the time, Hamsa is going on. When the child comes out of the womb, it first breathes out and then breathes in with the sound hum. From then on, the mantra keeps repeating itself. Because a person does not remember that he has been initiated into the mantra, he has to go to a guru and receive initiation again. However, the mantra is already going on inside. All he really has to do is become aware of it. To understand the secret of Hamsa, you first have to understand the secret of prana. You should never underestimate the value of prana. Prana is the vital force. Now there is a footnote here that the word prana has 2 different meanings. It is a general term referring to the vital force of the universe and also a technical term referring to the exhalation. So, prana is a divine object of your life. Prana is the support of your body, Once the prana leaves the body becomes a mere corpse, which no one wants to look at. In fact, not only is prana the support of human life, it is the vital force of the entire universe. It pervades and supports the entire world. All beings are alive because of prana. Even trees and mountains exist with its support. Shaivism says, from Shiva to an ant, everything lives because of prana. Although prana is one, within the human body, it takes 5 forms, known as prana, apana, samana, vyana, and udana. In these 5 forms, it flows through the system of 72 million nadis, or bodily channels, and carries on all the life processes. Everything depends on prana. A scriptural author says, Sarvam prane pratishthitam. Prana is life itself. When the prana stops moving in and out of the body, there is either samadhi or death. With whose support does the prana move in and out? It is not we who bring the breath in and out of the body. The breathing process takes place on its own by the will of God. What would happen to us if the breath were to come inside and stop in the heart? This does not happen because there is a force that will not allow the breath to stop inside. Even if we want it to stop, that force pushes it out. In the same way, when the breath arises and goes out of the body, it does not stay outside. There is something that sucks it inside. The force that makes the breath go in and out is supreme consciousness, supreme energy. The same consciousness that creates the universe also pushes the breath in and out. In fact, the scriptures tell us that it is that very universal consciousness itself that comes in and goes out as the breath. The Upanishads say that prana is God. Shaivism says prakrisam with prane parinata. Universal consciousness becomes prana. In the process of creating the world, supreme consciousness evolves into prana and enters everything. On the one hand, it becomes sound. On the other hand, it becomes prana. It is the same supreme consciousness that has become our own prana, our own vital force. So the sound the breath makes as it flows in and out of the body is the utterance of supreme consciousness, the universal energy that creates the universe out of its own being, and that, when it resides in the human body, is known as Kundalini. This is what Shiva says in the Vigyan Bhairava. Kundalini herself is repeating the mantra Hamsa. Hamsa is the actual sound of God. This utterance of supreme consciousness, which goes on continuously and which we know as inhalation and exhalation, vibrates. I have already explained that according to Shaivism, it is this vibration that creates the inner and outer worlds. The universe has manifested out of Shabda Brahman, the original vibration, the primordial divine sound. The primordial sound Om gives rise to the 2 syllables Sah and Hum. And from these 2 syllables, the universe is born. So the 2 syllables that the inner consciousness utters as it brings the breath in and out of the body are the original sound vibration that manifests the cosmos. According to Shaivism, the manifest world is made up of different vibrations, different combinations of sounds. The sounds that form the basis of the world are the sounds of the 52 letters of the Sanskrit alphabet. In the process of creating the world, the power of consciousness manifests as these different sound syllables, which we know as the different letters of the alphabet. These letters are called matrikas. When it takes the form of letters, supreme consciousness is called matrika shakti, the power of letters. That group of letters, the matrika, is the cause of all knowledge and all understanding, and the cause of the creation of the inner and outer worlds. Ham and Sah are the source of all these letters. All the other sound syllables arise from the two syllables Ham and Sah. Thus, Ham and Sah, which arise and subside with the prana, are actually the source of the universe. The entire world is in the form of the words that have emanated from these two syllables. The Guru Gita says, Ham and Sah are the source of the world. In the Shiva Sutra, there is an aphorism. Jnana adhishtanam matrika. Matrika, the power of sound inherent in the alphabet, is the source of limited knowledge. Limited knowledge is dualistic knowledge, worldly knowledge, knowledge of differences. Matrika is the source of all this knowledge. It is the source of all language, all scriptures, all poetry. Through the workings of the Matrika Shakti, letters form words, words form sentences, sentences have meaning and give rise to understanding. Words give rise to all our feelings. Whatever we think and feel through the power of words. Through words, we experience the dualities of pleasure and pain, good and evil, virtue and sin. If someone calls you a sinner, you feel insulted and ashamed. But if someone calls you a good person, you become happy. This is the duality created by words. And because of this duality, you suffer or experience happiness. Yet all these feelings and states are nothing more than the play of two syllables, Ham and Sah, because all words have emanated from them. It is because you do not understand the true nature of the letters that you are bound by them. When you understand their true nature, they no longer have the power to bind you. To understand these two syllables, Ham and Sah, as they really are, is liberation. Hum, the sound that comes in with inhalation, is Shiva, the pure I consciousness, the inner self. Sah, which goes out with the exhalation, is Shakti, God's creative energy. The Spandakarika says that the first throb, the first movement of Shakti is called Sah. Inhalation and exhalation are the dance of Shiva and Shakti, of God and His creative energy. As the supreme energy comes in, it makes the sound hum. As it goes out, it makes the sound sah. In this way, it creates and dissolves infinite worlds. If you perceive this with true understanding, you realize the truth immediately. By understanding the mystery of Hamsa, you come to know the self. The poet Sundar Das said, the self is God, the self is consciousness, the self is always repeating its own mantra, Soham, Soham. The mantra Hamsa is the source of all knowledge. Therefore, to obtain knowledge, you should repeat it. The poet Kalidasa, who knew the mystery of words, said that whether in mundane or spiritual life, we cannot understand anything without using words. Without words, we cannot carry on any of our activities. Even mute people use sign language to communicate with one another. We can describe an object only when it has a name, only when letters are combined into words and have a meaning. In mundane life, the word conveys knowledge of an object and therefore is one with that object. In the same way, knowledge of God is contained in these two syllables, Ham and Sah. However, if you want this mantra to bear fruit for you, you must understand it in the right way. Everyone in the world repeats Hamsa, but most people do not get its fruit, do not gain its fruit. This is because they do not have the right understanding about it. Shaivism says, Prithan matraha, prithan mantri, na siddhyati kadachana. If the mantra is kept separate from the repeater of the mantra and its goal, one cannot attain the fruit of the mantra. There should not be any feeling of duality between the mantra and the repeater of the mantra. In the practice of Hamsa, the mantra takes place on its own, and the goal of the mantra is the self. It is that which repeats it. It is that which is its goal, and it is that which is attained by repeating it. When the mantra, the repeater of the mantra, and the goal of the mantra become one and the same for you, you attain the fruit of the mantra. This is the method of practicing the mantra. Eknath Maharaj used to say, I am God, I am the devotee, and I am the articles of worship. In the same way, when you practice Hamsa mantra, you should remember that you are the mantra and the goal of the mantra. You should always remember that you are Paramhamsa, you are Shiva, you are the Lord Himself. Shaivism says that contemplation of Soham is the contemplation of your own true nature. It is the knowledge of your own self. Therefore, you should realize this japa in all your activities. Until you understand that the mantra is going on within you, you can repeat it. As you repeat it, sitting quietly and combining the two syllables with the breath, you will eventually begin to understand that it is happening on its own. You will begin to hear it coming in and out with the breath. But it is not enough just to hear the mantra. There is more to the Hamsa, awareness. You should understand this very clearly because it is a mystery that only one with a sharp and subtle intelligence can grasp. As you watch the breath coming in and going out, you will become aware that when it comes in to a distance of 12 fingers and merges. The place where it merges is called Hridaya, the heart, or the inner Dvadashanta. It is also called the Shiva Dvadashanta. The breath merges here, and then it arises again and goes out to a distance of 12 fingers and merges in the space outside. That outer space is called the outer Dvadashanta, the Shakti Dvadashanta, or the external heart. Here, heart does not refer to the physical organ. The heart is the place where the breath merges, inside and outside. In reality, these two places are one. The duality of inner and outer space exists only because you have the sense of your physical body. The moment you transcend your body consciousness, the inner and outer spaces merge. This happens naturally as you pursue Hamsa. When the breath comes in with the sound hum and merges inside, there is a fraction of a moment that is completely still and free of thought. This is the Madhya Dasha, the space between the breaths. This is where you have to focus in meditation. To focus on that space is the highest meditation and the highest knowledge. That still space between the breaths, that space where no thoughts exist, is the true goal of the mantra. It is a miraculous space. It is aham vimarsha, the inner pulsation of consciousness. It is from this space that all words arise and subside. It is this space without form that pulls the apana inside and pushes the prana out. This space where hum merges inside before sah has arisen is the space of God, of supreme consciousness, of the self. The place where sah merges outside is equally the place of God. So realize that moment of the merging of the two syllables. If you come to know that moment, if you become established in it, you experience the truth. This is Hamsa Vidya, the science of Hamsa. Not only is it natural mantra repetition, it is natural pranayama. The yoga scriptures mention many different forms of pranayama, regulation of breath, and kumbhaka, suspension of breath. Yogis practice pranayama in order to quiet the mind. They practice kumbhaka because when the breathing is suspended, one gets into samadhi. But Shaivism says that pranayama and kumbhaka should happen naturally through the inspiration of God. In fact, they are happening automatically. Who does not do pranayama day and night continuously? Inhalation, exhalation, and suspension of breath are taking place. This is natural pranayama, natural kumbhaka. So there is no need for you to practice any special technique of pranayama. You should just try to understand what is happening with the breath. You should not try to do anything. There is no need for you to regulate your breathing. Just let it come in and go out naturally. There is no need for you to try to suspend your breath. You just have to become aware of the space that already exists between the breaths. The state of stillness that occurs when the syllables merge inside and outside is natural kumbhaka. As you practice Hamsa, the time of the suspension of breath automatically begins to extend itself. The duration of the kumbhaka increases naturally. As long as the breath is suspended, you experience the self. This is the state of samadhi. From that arises perfect bliss. The purpose of practicing Hamsa mantra is to attain that state where the breath merges. That is called the natural state, the state in which kumbhaka takes place on its own. This is natural yoga. It is the yoga of the Siddhas and it is supreme. It is meant for a very intelligent person. For even though it is very natural, only a person with great understanding can attain it. There was a great saint named Ranganatha Maharaj who said, Not everyone can learn the skill of merging in that. It is very easy, yet not everyone knows how to become absorbed in the self naturally and spontaneously. He went on to say, only one who has the grace of the Guru can attain this skill, which cuts asunder the noose of worldliness. It is not that you have to attain that kumbhaka for an hour or two. Even to attain it for a second is more than enough. The scriptural authors have measured that value of that still moment when the breath merges. They have said that to sing God's glory 1,000,000 times is equal to saying the mantra once. But that to repeat the mantra 1,000,000 times is equal to 1 second of the meditation in which you merge in that space of stillness. That space is supremely silent. In that space, there are no thoughts, no imaginings, no feelings. It is completely free of forms and attributes. It is that state. In that state, there is no pain, no pleasure, no dullness, no ignorance. That is the state of the supreme truth. It is Turiya, the state, the transcendental state. It is the highest state, the highest yoga. The moment when merging takes place, that moment of natural kumbhaka, that moment when hum goes away and sah has not yet arisen, is the true mantra. Not even the two syllables hum and sah, but that merging space is the true mantra. Sometimes people are confused about whether to repeat the mantra Hamsa or Soham. But there is no reason for confusion because Hamsa is Soham and Soham is Hamsa. There is no difference in the syllables or in the meaning. It is only that the syllables are reversed. Hamsa means I am that. Soham means that am I. There is no difference. So you can use whichever form of the mantra you like, whichever form the Guru gives, repeating hum on the in breath and so or sah on the out breath. What is important is that you come to know the space where the two syllables arise and subside. That is the state of God. And you take the help of the two syllables just to attain that state. Until you get into that state where the syllables merge, keep repeating the mantra. But know that the true goal of the mantra is that awareness. Once, King Janaka was sitting on the bank of a river, repeating Soham at the top of his voice. A sage named Ashtavakra happened to be passing by. He was a great knower of truth, an enlightened being. When he saw Janaka, he was surprised. He knew that Janaka was a great being. He was known as Videhi Janaka, the one who has gone beyond body consciousness. Although he ruled his kingdom, he did so from the state beyond identification with the body. So Ashtavakra wondered why Janaka was repeating Soham in this manner. As I said before, great beings do not teach only through philosophical discourses. They teach in whatever way they feel like teaching, and they may use any means to make their point. Ashtavakra watched Janaka for a while, wondering how he should instruct him. Then he had an idea. He sat down. In one hand he had a water bowl, and in the other hand he had a yoga danda, the T-shaped stick that yogis use for support in meditation. He began to say very loudly, "This is my water bowl, this is my yoga stick. This is my water bowl, this is my yoga stick." King Janaka began repeating his mantra louder. The sage also began to repeat his mantra louder. After a while, King Janaka became annoyed. He opened his eyes and said, "Oh brother, what are you doing? What are you doing?" asked Ashtavakra. "I am repeating the mantra Soham," Janaka said. Ashtavakra said, "I am also repeating a mantra. I am repeating, this is my water bowl, this is my yoga stick." The king said, "Have you lost your brains? Who told you that the water bowl and the stick don't belong to you? Why do you have to keep shouting about it?" The sage replied, "It seems to me that you are the one who lacks understanding. Who told you that you are not that? Why do you have to keep on shouting that you are that?" When Janaka heard this, he suddenly understood the truth. He realized that he was that. He understood that he did not need to go on repeating Soham, that he needed only to understand it. That is what you also need to understand. Hamsa is not a mantra that you merely repeat. What you have to do is become established in the awareness of the mantra going on inside you, in the goal of the mantra, in the pulsation that exists in that space, in the space where the syllables arise and subside. When I say meditate on your own self, this is what I mean. To meditate on yourself means to attain this space. People often talk about meditation, and to learn meditation, they pursue so many different techniques. They undergo so many difficulties trying to learn how to meditate. And when they do not succeed, so many doubts come into their minds. Therefore, first of all, you must understand the meaning of meditation. Real meditation is a state completely free of thoughts. This is how the great sage Maharshi Patanjali defined meditation in his Yoga Sutra. Yogaschitta vriddhi nirodha. Yoga is to still the movements of the mind. Meditation does not mean holding a certain object in the mind. If you think this is what meditation is, then you are insulting meditation. Meditation should happen very naturally. It should be completely spontaneous. This space that you attain when the prana goes out and dissolves, and when the apana comes in and dissolves, this space where there is no thought, no object, is true meditation. It is natural meditation, the highest meditation. Gyaneshwar Maharaj said, the true meaning of meditation is to do nothing. This does not mean that you should become lazy and just lie down in any way you like. To do nothing means to be without any object in meditation. Many people complain to me that they do not have visions during meditation, that nothing happens to them. They say, I don't see any flames, any colors, or any lights. Yet it is that nothing which is the real state of meditation. Truly speaking, if you see anything in your meditation, then your meditation is worldly. It is of the world. Only that complete stillness where there is no thought in the mind is real meditation. So Hamsa is natural meditation. It is the highest knowledge. It is not a religion. It is not a sect. It is neither Hinduism nor Christianity nor Islam. It is the ism of pure I consciousness, the ism of your own self. It is very spontaneous and completely true. All the Siddhas have said that there is no greater knowledge than the knowledge of Hamsa, no greater japa than ajapa japa, no greater worship than the uniting of Ham and Sah. In Delhi, there was a great being named Sundar Das. He said, day in and day out, the breath comes in and goes out with Soham, Soham. Use the mala of the prana and repeat it all the time. What can you attain by using wooden beads? If you repeat this ceaselessly, it cools down all your different kinds of anguish. Sundar Das went on to say, With this mantra, the self is constantly repeating itself. People have their own interests, and according to their interests, they worship different deities. But true worship is the understanding of the inner hum and the outer sa. This mantra is the same for everybody, no matter which country you come from, no matter which religion you follow. The natural awareness of I am that exists for you. Different philosophies may use different words for the mantra. People may hear the sounds of the syllables in different ways. In Sufism, they hear them as Yahoo. In Tibetan Buddhism, they hear them as Hung So. But all these are really the same mantra. This mantra is beyond the body, beyond the senses, beyond the four psychic instruments. It comes from Paravani, the deepest level of speech. It emanates spontaneously with breath. A true yogi is one who does this natural pranayama, uniting his incoming and outgoing breaths with the syllables hum and sa, and performing this natural japa, ajapa japa. In this way, a yogi brings himself and God together. He unites himself with the self from which he has become separated. There are people who do a few postures and pranayama and call themselves yogis. They are not true yogis. A true yogi is one who becomes established in his own self with the awareness of Hamsa, of I am that. Gyaneshwar Maharaj said, the king of yogis takes repose in the space between hum and sa. Once a person is established there, meditation goes on continuously, whatever he is doing. Kabir wrote, Soham ajapa jap, chute punya aur paap. The unrepeated mantra repetition Soham destroys all your sins and virtues. The Soham awareness is also described as the awareness Aham Brahmasmi, I am the Absolute, or Tat Tvam Asi, thou art that. It is the understanding of your identity with the Supreme Principle, and this understanding has the power to destroy all of your accumulated karmas and past impressions. Not only does it destroy the effects of millions of sins, it also cuts the bondage that arises from your good actions. Most people want to eliminate the effects of their bad actions, not realizing that their virtues are just as binding as their sins. Your sins bind you with an iron chain and your virtues with a golden one. That is the only difference between them. If you want liberation, both sin and virtue must be wiped out. So that is what happens when you attain the awareness of Soham. This awareness puts an end to the cycle of birth and death, killing the notion of duality. As long as you have the feeling of duality, the feeling that one human being is different from another, that one class is different from another, you cannot experience real happiness. The sense of otherness is the source of all fear, of all suffering, and all sin. However, as you practice Hamsa, the consciousness of equality dawns in a natural manner. The mind and the breathing are intimately connected, for it is the movement of prana that creates the countless universes that arise and subside in the mind. When the breath is uneven, the mind becomes disturbed and the sense of duality arises. As the breath becomes even, the mind automatically becomes still. Ordinary people often breathe rapidly, and their outgoing breath is expelled for a long distance. This indicates an outgoing mind. As the mantra goes deeper, the breathing slows and the outgoing breath becomes shorter. The incoming and outgoing breaths become even. And as this happens, the mind and senses turn inward toward the self. The purpose of all the pranayama that Hatha yogis perform is to balance the duration of inhalation and exhalation. Because this balance quiets the mind and brings the awareness of equality. This happens very easily and naturally through the practice of Hamsa. As you become aware of Hamsa, the breath naturally begins to come in and go out to the same distance and for the same length of time. The spontaneous suspension of breath that I have already described happens automatically. In the still space where the breath merges, the feeling of duality disappears and you become conscious of the equality of all things. Gyaneshwar Maharaj said, Tai Sharira Bhava Nashati Indriya Vishaya Visharati Jai Soham Bhava Pratiti Pragata Hoy. As you become aware of Soham, the body consciousness dissolves, and the senses, which have been wandering among outer objects, automatically turn within. Then you experience the union of Shiva and Shakti within yourself. Outside and inside become one. The syllable Ham, which comes in with the Apana, is the seed mantra of the self. Whether we know it or not, we are always aware of this syllable. We always say I. Truly speaking, our real identity is Hamsa. That is our real humanity. The embodied self which experiences itself as I is really the divine self. But although we are all aware of the first syllable, even though we always say I, we have given up the awareness of the second syllable. We have given up the understanding of that. And because we give up the awareness of that, which is the awareness of the self, we forget our real identity and begin attaching our I to different things. We begin to say, I am a man, I am a woman, I am an officer, I am a Republican, I am a rich person. Then we begin to say, my husband, my wife, my cat, my dog, my body. Our I becomes the I of the petty ego, which identifies itself with the body and senses. Yet, as soon as we understand the second syllable, as soon as we understand that we are that, then our I becomes free of association and completely, totally pure. It becomes a true Aham. Aham Vimarsha, the pure I consciousness. The ordinary I is consciousness in bondage. The pure I is consciousness in the state of liberation. As you repeat Hamsa with the understanding of the perfect Aham, this realization dawns. When you begin to have the awareness of this pure I, the intellect too becomes purified, and then you are able to perceive God shining within. The knowledge that you are the self arises spontaneously within you. The moment you perceive the supreme principle in the mantra, you are liberated. The mantra of pure I consciousness destroys the duality of this world and reveals that God who is one. Gyaneshwar Maharaj said, Pratibimbaoni Bimbavari Prabhechi Jaisi Ujari Te Soham Vritti Avadhari Taisi Hoy Aiseni Maga Paraspare Te Soham Vritti Jay Avatare Taitiyehi Sakata Sare Apaisaya. Just as light pervades everywhere, the Soham consciousness extends from the embodied self to the supreme self. When man becomes Fully immersed in the Soham vision, he spontaneously merges in the Supreme Being. Knowledge of God is a matter of understanding. You do not have to make an effort to find God because there is no place where God is not. He is not something you are going to attain. You simply have to become aware of Him. Gyaneshwar said, to know that a person is your father, how long do you have to repeat the mantra? He is my father, he is my father. Your mother just says, child, look, here is your father, and immediately you understand it. How much effort do you have to make? The scriptures and the saints are like a mother. When they say, you are that, how long should it take you to know that? In the same way, the science of Hamsa is a matter of awareness. It is the highest sadhana because you do not do the practice. You simply become aware that the practice is happening on its own. Although it is very simple, the yoga of Hamsa encompasses all other yogas. All other yogas depend on it. The Guru Gita says, Ham Bijam. Ham is the seed. In the seed of the self, the entire universe is contained. In the same way, Hamsa mantra is the seed of all spiritual practices. Just as a huge banyan tree springs from a tiny seed and contains branches, roots, leaves, flowers, fruit, and thousands of other seeds, the seed of Hamsa contains yoga, meditation, japa, austerities, and all powers. There are many philosophies, many teachings, and many traditions, but of all these, the two syllables Ham and Sah are the only things you really need to keep with you. The great Saint Sundardas said, give up everything else, keep only these two syllables. You can practice Hamsa, whether you're walking or sitting, eating or sleeping. You can practice it no matter what you're doing. The great being, Brahmananda said, O sadhus, O noble people, contemplate the mantra Soham. Become aware of the mantra Soham. The fingers do not have to move on the mala. The tongue does not have to make a sound. The unrepeated mantra is going on within you all the time. Watch it. With the sound So, breathe out. With the sound Hum, breathe in. Day and night, whether you are awake or asleep, the mantra constantly goes on within you. 21,600 times a day, this mantra goes on. Contemplate it with joy all the time. Brahmananda said, as you contemplate this mantra, you attain the supreme state. Namdev, another great saint, said, just keep repeating Soham, Soham all the time, and you yourself will become God. This mantra has the power to transform you completely. Thank you for listening to this long but very meaningful and very deep commentary on the science of Hamsa from the Vigyan Bhairava Tantra from this wonderful book, I Am That, by the great Siddha Yogi, Swami Muktananda, the great Siddha Guru. Once again, I'll mention that the copyrights to this work reside with Siddha Yoga Publication, and it is published by Chit Shakti Publications. Thank you. Namaste. Guru Om. May all understand the secret of Hamsa. May all attain to silence and stillness and peace. Guru Om.